Yeah.
The little country of Bhutan has an interesting way of tracking its, let's say, health among its people. It's called the gross national happiness. And I think you could make a case that if you track gross national happiness and morality in those parallels, because we can track certain aspects of happiness like security, food safety, other things that people need to achieve happiness. Morality is, in my view, simply a human condition, has no application to other than humans. And it seems like this would be one way to approach the scientific level.
Yeah. So the idea is, what country is it? Bhutan, maybe?
Bhutan.
Yeah, Bhutan that is measuring not so much gross national product, because it's not doing so well on that front, but it's measuring gross national happiness. And it is actually doing surprisingly well on that front, given its economic status. So maybe one way to cash out the definition of morality is to talk about, basically whatever maximizes human happiness. That's what we should be concerned with when we're talking about morality. And this is actually a pretty popular view. And if you are able to provide a specific enough definition for what happiness is, you could go out and measure what it is that promotes the most happiness. This would be hedonic utilitarianism, or preference satisfaction utilitarianism, or desire satisfaction consequentialism. There are a couple of reasons why that isn't my view. For one, the intuition here from John Stuart Mill or even from Aristotle is that happiness is the only thing that we value or desire, and I think that's going to turn out to be false. We can often sacrifice happiness for other things that we desire. So I think that is a theory worth doing as a science. It's certainly worth figuring out what it is that promotes happiness. I think we would all care about that. But I think we're going to be able to find a theory that both makes more abundant true claims and is also more about the subject matter of morality in terms of capturing the assumptions of everyday moral discourse around the world. I'm hopeful that we can do even better than that. But even apart from whether or not we want to semantically make the decision to call that morality, obviously we all care about what it is that produces happiness. So that's a valid research program anyway. Other questions?
Yeah. This is working now. All right. I guess I'm not sure what exactly you're reaching beyond just a large-scale intersubjective approach to morality. So you speak pretty poorly about subjective accounts of morality. Whatever God says is right. Whatever Britney Spears says is right. And that seems problematic. It seems like you don't favor that very much. So you go for one where you say, let's try to capture the overall moral discourse of people around the globe, let's say, as best we can. Put that together. That to me just seems like an account of intersubjective approach to morality, which okay, you can make arguments for that. But I don't really see how science really helps much with that in the intersubjective and scientific realm, because let's say we do that. We get everybody's opinions about what they think is right or wrong, blah, blah. We put them together. Now we have the most popular intersubjective take on what is right and what is wrong. That doesn't seem like it would really help me in my moral thinking process. So, for example, let's say hedonism or something like that turns out to be, whatever produces the most pleasure, a utilitarian approach. That is what most people agree is morally right. That's what we're getting at. And so I realize that, and then I'm faced with a moral decision, and I calculate, how much happiness this will produce and how much it won't. And in the end, I still think my intuitions tell me it's wrong, even though this intersubjective morality says it's right. Doesn't seem like it would be very useful to me in that situation. I would just disagree with it. And for example, the intersubjective approach to this might also be biased towards what time you're at. So for example, if we were, I don't know, century ago or something like that, you take an opinion of who, like, in general, what do people feel about slavery? Is it right? Is it wrong? Okay, well, most people think that is right. Now, I'm on my own and I think it's wrong. and I do this science calculation to realize most people think it's right. I still think it's wrong. It still doesn't seem to be that useful. So I guess I'm just saying I feel like the science will always have the is-ought gap between you can determine, what is out there, but it doesn't necessarily determine what ought to be out there. And the intersubjective approach doesn't really seem to be like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it would really help my moral intuitions much. I would still go by my moral intuitions, not by just general people's moral intuitions.
There were like 7 or 8 issues in there. Okay, I'll try to do them actually in order. You said that I seemed pretty harsh on moral subjectivism. I'm actually not that harsh on moral subjectivism, I just don't like it being called moral objectivism. So my complaint was that Dr. Craig was calling a morally subjective theory a morally objective theory. Actually, I think it would be pretty easy to make a morally subjective theory that was correct according to its own definitions. If I define morally good in terms of what Luke Melhauser approves of, that's a subjective moral theory, and I could make rather trivially true claims. Like, for example, ice cream has a great deal of moral value on that view. And that would be very easy to measure. The problem is more the semantic issue. I don't think we capture very much about what we mean by morality. But I think there were a whole bunch of questions that you raised where I think we're kind of agreeing on a lot more than you might think. Really what I'm trying to do here is not so much like accept the problem of moral definitions or what's the one true moral theory and then solve it. What I'm more trying to do is just say it's a bad question and dissolve it. And so I say there's not going to be just one true moral theory. There's going to be a lot of different theories that have lots to do with what we usually talk about with regard to morality. Some of them might be about how do we produce the most moral happiness, or the most happiness, how do we produce the most pleasure, and those are all scientific questions again. And so what you were saying about how even if we did this whole survey taking of what the assumptions of moral discourse are, and we picked the one theory that captured the most of those assumptions, and we defined morality in terms of that, I would want to say that whole time when we're doing that, we would have to be very conscious of the fact that language is constructed. And so maybe if we find that theory of morality that most captures what we mean in moral discourse, then that's going to be interesting, but maybe that's not your goal. Maybe your goal isn't to do whatever it is. Like, let's say we go with the definition of creates the most well-being for conscious creatures. Maybe you have other goals, and you don't have a personal, internal reason for action to promote the greatest well-being for conscious creatures. And I want to say that that's fine. I accept that because I'm trying to, again, dissolve this mystery and this force behind the word morality and just recognize it for the word tool that it is. I'm struggling to find a really clear way to talk about that. The theory of morality that I actually deploy, and didn't mention even tonight, says that, for example, it is true that we have reasons for action to promote or condemn certain types of action, because if I condemn lying, that's going to help me fulfill my desires in a lot of cases, because people aren't going to lie to me and thwart my desires. So it might be the case that that you have reasons for action to condemn lying that you don't even know about. And so that's why this still might be a better approach than going with your intuitions, because for example, let's say your intuitions say that there are a lot of cases in which lying is going to help you get what you want. And then let's say we do the research and it turns out that lying is really destructive to happiness or something. It probably isn't, but to a great extent, but let's say it is. That would be a case in which I would say for your own benefit, you would want to go with the science instead of your intuitions on that matter. Gosh, I'm really struggling to think how to... Maybe, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I guess I would say, to some extent, I feel like what you're getting at is what we already do in law. So, for example, our legal system is based around an agreed, like in general, agreed
Yeah.
what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. But when I see something as illegal, I don't necessarily see it as wrong. Like,
Right.
okay, so our society says it's wrong, but that doesn't mean it really is wrong, you know? So it might be legal or illegal, but that doesn't mean it's wrong or right.
Right.
In a similar case, you know, in general, most people think this is right or whatever, and so we agree on that. That doesn't necessarily mean it's right. So to take my fickle, intersubjective opinion and think somehow everybody's fickle, subjective opinion is somehow better than my fickle, subjective opinion, just seems like you're, you know, flirting with the same problem, not getting it.